And thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Professor Harris, before coming to Congress, I participated in the defense of children in what's become known in Pennsylvania as the Kids for Cash scandal. And for those who aren't familiar, between 2003 and 2008, hundreds of Pennsylvania teens were sentenced to a for-profit detention center in which two juvenile court judges had a financial interest. Those sentences usually occurred after the young people were pressured to waive their right to counsel or confess to crimes that they didn't commit. In one of those cases, after the court's conduct was declared unconstitutional and our client was released, her parents got a hefty bill from the county for the cost of her unconstitutional detention. Professor Harris, in your testimony, you spoke about fees like this being imposed on children and families, even when the children are later cleared of misconduct. Can you very briefly highlight what we might do at the federal level?
Thank you for raising that important point that we haven't talked a bit about, but that there's profit making off of these charges and fines and fees for minors and for adults. And it creates this perverse incentive, as we've seen for some judges, but for other officials of the criminal legal system to try and find ways, right, to keep making profits. We also have a lot of contracts with private entities, and so it's not just about private facilities or private jails or prisons. It's about private entities that are infused within local courthouses, jails, probation officers, and prisons that are allowed to make profits off of a literal captive audience. I'm not clear on what the federal government could do, and I do think that contracts should be made publicly available so we understand the degree of profit making and kickbacks that local governments are getting from private entities in these relationships.
Thank you. I think in that case, actually, what the federal government was able to do involved prosecution for wire fraud, and those judges ended up in jail. Judge Foster, thank you for mentioning my bill, the Bipartisan Bicameral Driving for Opportunity Act, which we successfully passed out of this committee earlier this year. We know that court-imposed fines and fees can land people in an endless cycle of debt. And if they can't afford to pay the costs immediately, they can face harmful consequences like the suspension of government-issued IDs like driver's licenses, and about 11 million people nationwide have suspended driver's licenses for unpaid fines and fees. I understand that some states and localities have begun implementing laws to end the suspension or revocation of licenses for unpaid fines and fees. Why are they reconsidering that, and what role can the federal government play to incentivize states to enact these reforms and end this practice once and for all?
Thank you for your question, and thank you for your sponsorship of the Driving for Opportunity Act. It is important. So the states that have stopped suspending driver's licenses for unpaid fines and fees, and there are several, we are proud of the fact that for as little as 4 years ago, there were only 3 states that did not suspend driver's licenses for unpaid fines and fees. And today, 22 states have engaged in some form of reform. And that's important. But the reason that they've enacted reforms and stopped the practice is because it's counterproductive. It doesn't take most people much time to understand that if you want someone to pay you money, taking away their driver's license, their means of getting to work, is not a terribly effective way of collecting that money. And states have understood that. They've also understood the much larger economic consequences to the states. In the United States today, 30% of jobs require driving as part of the job. And I don't mean just Uber and Lyft drivers, but if you think about it, a plumber, an electrician, a construction worker, a Verizon repair person, not to mention long-haul truckers. All of those jobs require a person to drive, and that requires a valid driver's license. And if we take that license away, we make our states less productive. In addition are the costs of enforcing driving with a suspended license. In many places around the country, driving with a suspended license is the #1 criminal charge. That means that the system is spending a lot of money prosecuting people whose only crime is to be poor. So
Thank
what
you.
can the federal
I
government
think,
do? Exactly what you've proposed.
thank you for that. And I see my time has expired. The gentlewoman from Missouri is recognized for 5 minutes.
St. Louis, and I thank